So welcome everyone back to the channel. Today I have Rick, who has guested the channel earlier to talk about, among many things, Pillars of Eternity and The Witcher. Today we are focusing on Pillars of Eternity. This is the second game, Deadfire, and we would like to discuss the lore of the game and some details of the game and why we like the game so much, why it's maybe more of a book than a game. I'm not sure what you think, but it has a lot of bookish qualities, and it's a dream for us lore seekers, I would say, and it's extremely rich. I would say it's the most Malazan-esque game, but it could be other things as well, like Skyrim, for example. There are other books out there, of course, but when I was preparing myself for this video, I realized how much I don't know because it's so big. But for you who don't know what Pillars of Eternity is, it's a video game. This is the second. There are three. There's Pillars of Eternity 1, 2, and then it's a third game now, Avowed, which is a action RPG. So it's different. This is a CRPG like Baldur's Gate, for example. We will discuss a few things today, and that is what the game is about, of course, how we found the game, characters we liked. We will summarize the story, and we'll talk about the lore, for example, the Pantheon, and a little bit about politics, and also souls, you could say. Which a central theme in Pillars of Eternity, and we also have a spoiler section in the end. So we will tell you clearly when we enter spoiler territory. I think, though, that there will be some slight spoilers when we talk about it, at least in the beginning of the game. So I don't think we can avoid that 100%, but I hope that doesn't make you bothered or you don't want to watch it, because you will quickly understand the things we are talking about just after an hour or two, I think. So welcome, Rick. How are you, and how is your relationship to Pillars of Eternity?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back on the channel. It's always great to be here and to chat with you. And I'm especially excited to chat about Pillars of Eternity today. It's a game I played several years ago, the first one, and then a couple years ago, the second one, and just absolutely loved it. And yeah, as someone who loves the lore of games and books and fantasy worlds, this one is perfect for that. I originally played the game a year after it came out. I believe it came out in 2025 or 2015, sorry. And I think I first played it in 2016. And it was because prior to playing this game and a few other games, I had mostly just played the Elder Scrolls games, Skyrim and Oblivion. And I played so much of them, and was kind of curious to find other games with big, interesting worlds. And I was listening to a video game podcast, and it suggested this game as kind of one of these spiritual successors to like the Baldur's Gate games, which I kind of knew about but hadn't played, and just heard a bunch of great things about it. And so then I played it, and I loved it. It was great. And then a few years after I played it again because I had gotten the expansion, the White Marches, I believe, and loved it all over again. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started with the game. What about you?
I was, I think it was in 2015 when the pandemic started, actually. So now a very good friend of mine, we're in the same board game group, and also discusses a lot of books and video games too. Gustav, he advised me to really look into this game, because he just said that you will definitely love this. This was actually before Malazan Book of the Fallen period for me, basically.
Oh, okay.
So that's, in a way, it's a bit interesting. but it ticked all the boxes that I or triggered or everything in me with a extensive lore, fantasy, complex characters, maybe morally gray, but maybe not so morally gray, but there is some of that as well.
Yeah.
So, and basically it's more a book, maybe more of a book than a video game, but you can play Pillars of Eternity as you like. I think you can go as deep as you want to, or you can just enjoy the fights and leveling up and so on. So that's how I got into it, and I really inspired. So I just started reading about all the lore and everything, and then it was no end to the lore, so it was perfect for me, basically.
Yeah. So when you say to you it's more book than video game, did you find yourself like diving into and enjoying the combat and the mechanics of the game, or was that not as interesting to you and you were much more about the story and the characters and the lore?
Actually, I think I'm quite good at combat now in CRPGs, but I wasn't when I started Pillars of Eternity. I had tried Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and so on before. I mean, many years ago, and enjoyed the games, but I thought they were complicated, and back then maybe they didn't look as good, even if Pillars of Eternity is a nod to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and to that era, but it's very beautifully made, I think, Pillars of Eternity. So
it is a pretty game. Yeah, I think that's interesting because I definitely would agree that like there's so much depth to this game in terms of the story, the characters, and the plot, and the world itself. But I also found that I really enjoyed the mechanics of it because it's its own system. It's like there are elements that you will find similar with like Dungeons and Dragons and those sorts of tabletop games. But it's got all of its own races, all of its own classes, its own mechanics. And I just found all of that really well done, in addition to the writing being phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think I always look for the story first, almost.
Yeah.
I think I do, actually. So I think the story was so captivating and deep, you could say. And also, everything is well made or well done with the pantheon and the theories around souls, which we will talk about soon later here in the video. And also the atmosphere. So it was not only the story. I think the atmosphere with the music, the lighting, felt very cozy, so to speak, and you felt at home in the Dungeons and Dragons world, I think.
Yeah, this game and both Pillars 1 and 2 have some of my favorite video game music, and I love just putting that on and listening to it because not only does it remind me of the games, but I just think the music was so well done. That's a good point.
And I also think that the start of the game was very atmospheric. So basically, when the game starts, you belong to a caravan. You're in this land called Deerwood. I think the politics is quite complex for this kind of game, but in the beginning you don't know so much. You're in with this caravan. You're in Deerwood. You're looking for new missions, and you have been with this caravan for a while, traveling around. But now the caravan has to stop because a storm is coming, and you have to investigate what's happening. I think that was the start of everything. And when the game starts, it's everything. I mean, it's a book in a way that is a lot written in text. So the beginning starts with this music. You see the illustrated caravan, and you have the text rolling to the right, which explains everything, what's happening. And you stop, and you suddenly you investigate, of course, where you are with a group. You are together with a girl. No, I don't remember her name. It's to girl you are, but she's. I think she can survive, but for most people, she is killed in the beginning.
I do, yeah, because you start. There are two, like in the tutorial area. There are two characters that you also two companions you have.
Mm,
I don't know if they can survive. I never had them survive. They both died.
mm.
And then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
continue on and get new companions from there.
yeah. And when you search the area, you first of all there's some enemies around there, and you also get there is a it's called a bivouac, or it's some kind of
Yeah,
magical storm that you
yeah.
encounter early in the game, and a machine that is doing something. There is a mages. I think you quite early understand that they you don't know what it is yet, but
Hmm.
Glenn Fathens is the. It sounds very Irish though. Is
Yeah.
the name? So they are doing something obviously magical, but you don't understand what that is. But all these events guide you further into the story. And the Pillars of Eternity works like that. That you very soon understand that you are something called a Watcher, but you don't know what that is. It means that you can see souls, but you have no clue why, basically. So I think that's an extremely brief summary of the start. The
Hmm.
caravan, the storm, and that the caravan is attacked basically, and also the bivouac incident. What was your memory of the start, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a great summary of what kind of happened. I think some of the additional things that I remember were the reason the caravan was attacked is because your caravan sets up at this ancient ruin, and the people who are doing the attacking is this culture that is very protective of these ancient ruins because these ancient ruins are of an ancient civilization, this mysterious civilization that you don't know much about. You learn more throughout the game. Um, and then when that storm happens, this magical soul storm, you flee into the ruin. Um, and you also meet a mysterious character in the ruins at the end when he activates that machine, which kind of then triggers you to become the Watcher. It like awakens that power within you, I
Mm,
guess. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, so I think all these fantasy games and also fantasy books have this kind of mystery where you don't know what's happening in the beginning, so you have to
Hmm.
explore. Actually, this is interesting. It's no, coming of age story or anything like that. It's very
Right.
common in fantasy. So this is a different theme, which I found interesting as well. Sparefell, I think she's called, by the way, the girl.
Oh, okay.
I see
One of
that in
the
my notes there.
companions. Yeah, and it's interesting because it, yeah, it's not one of those coming to age things because your character's already like an adult.
Mm,
They have this power awakened, but you don't know what that power really is at the beginning. You don't know who this mysterious figure was that activated the machine. You don't know what the machine was.
mm,
Um, and yeah, like you are immediately given a whole bunch of questions. Um, and then that's kind of the game is you're trying to figure out what the heck just happened. What happened to
mm,
you? What does it mean to be a watcher? Who's this figure? What is he doing? Um, and then there's also the kind of conflicts within the world that are both in the foreground and the background,
mm,
which add different kind of layers to the plot because they're not your core plot, but they quickly become tied into that core plot of the main character, which is really
mm,
cool. Like the
mm.
Hollowborn crisis.
Yeah.
If you're, yeah, do you remember?
Yes. 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 And by the way, the caravan is on its way to Gilded Vale.
Right.
So, and when so Deerwood is geographically maybe not so interesting, but still, it's a forest land, more or less. The second game is takes place in Deadfire, which is an archipelago, but this is mainland that we are
Yes, yeah.
on. And it's a mainland where there is a original civilization that has been there before, but since there are pillars that are very attractive called Idra, there is also themes of colonization, which we'll come to later as well. But there are those more major political themes, I would say. But in the beginning, it's only the personal motivation for the watcher that is interesting and highlighted in the game. And you quickly come to Gilded Vale. It's a village, and there you will rest at the inn, but you are also, and there you will be told about the Lord Redrick and the Hollowborn crisis.
Yeah.
And there is a tree that when you come to the city, there is a tree there, not so nice tree with a people who have been hanged because of their faith, I suppose. And there is I'm not sure if she's a watcher, but
No, she was, I think, and we'll get into what this is later, but I'm pretty sure she was like an animancer.
yeah. Caldera Beranzi.
Yeah, she was
They
a
have
dwarf.
funny names. It's interesting because it's Renaissance time maybe, and
Yep.
a lot of Italian and Spanish names, especially in Deadfire, the second game, but also in the first one. So I think that's a funny, an interesting take, because usually you have inspiration from other cultures in fantasy, but this is Southern Europe a lot as well. So I think that's great. Yeah, you come to this village, and in this village you immediately meet characters that you can have as your companions. So if you haven't played CRPGs, if you're new to that, only read fantasy books, for example, it's very common that you have a group, like in the Lord of the Rings, which you adventure together with, and that you can level up and equip and so on. And here you meet two people. That's Eder, I think it's called, and Alof as well.
Yep.
So if we just start with characters, what were your impressions of the companions and characters in general?
Yeah. Well, those two were definitely two of my favorites. And what's especially cool about those two in particular is they're in both games, which is super fun because you have each game has their own cast of characters, and there are some that carry into the second game, and both Adair and Aloth are those, two of those. Which isn't a major spoiler because they're on the cover art for both games. So, but they're both really cool characters, and funny enough, voiced by the same voice actor, Matthew Mercer, who's well known from stuff like Critical Role. But they're both really interesting characters because they have very prominent backgrounds. Like they're not necessarily famous characters or nobles or things like that, but they have really important backgrounds or backstories to the watcher and the quest that he's kind of on. And I really enjoyed. I think I almost always had one of those two in my party, both because I just liked their character and their personality, but also they were good characters. One, Adair, is like a soldier kind of warrior type fighter, and then Aloth is a wizard, and they were both very powerful characters too, which I think helped. And I think they were some of your favorites as well, right?
Yeah, especially Eder. I enjoy. He's very humor. He has quite a dry humor, but still fun humor, I think. And especially depending on what choices you do, he's I think very down to earth. So if you are bold and maybe a bit more egoistic. I think Eder will hit down on you.
Yeah.
They talk when you run around. They talk with you. It's a bit fun. So they have some
Yeah.
dialogue
They have-
together. They talk together with each other, and also, and he is he has a pipe, by the way. So people
Mhm.
look down on him. I read actually on the wiki because he's smoking this white leaf. But he's supposed to be quite sharp. And I think his story is interesting because he's a veteran from this war that has been previously called Saints War.
Mhm.
And his brother is dead or missing, not sure,
Yep.
especially not when the game starts. He is also from the Gilded Vale, and his brother is called Woden. And he early on, through him you get a lot of info about the politics or the pantheon because his family were devotees of Aethus,
Yep.
which is a major deity, but also very divisive deity as well. So they were followers of him, but this Saints War was between the Free Palatinate of Deerwood and Red Siras, and
Yep.
Red Siras was it's called Saint Waidwen, who was, I think, waging that war against the Deerwood,
Mhm.
and for Eder, they because Waidwen they fight for Aethus, if I understand correctly,
Yep.
and but Eder is he doesn't think that Waidwen is honest or pure. So they didn't sympathize with him, even though Waidwen was connected to Aethus, the god that they supported. So really early on in the game, you get this political context, you could say, but then you know very little about it, and it's quite, I
Right.
think, quite complex, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because and even kind of peeling back from there, both the Deerwood and Raid Saris, if I remember correctly, are independent kingdoms that broke off from an even larger empire, the um, Adarian Empire, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they both became independent states or nations, and then yeah, Red Saris, kind of this Widewind figure, rose up as like the embodiment of this god Aethys, um, and turned Red Saris into like this kind of religious cult country where they were just totally devoted to him. They essentially started a holy war, as I understand it and remember it, attacking Deerwood, and you had a lot of people who worshipped Aethys join Raid Saris, even from Deerwood, which created kind of friction within. But ultimately, the war, Widewind was stopped, he was defeated, and Deerwood was kept free. You learn a lot more about how he was defeated throughout this game and the implications of that. Um, and this game, I think, takes place shortly after the end of that war. So it's still very present in the minds of Deerwood, and has big implications for those that still live within Deerwood and worship Aethys. Um, and yeah, because I remember, I think when I played the second time, I decided to make myself a cleric of Aethys because it opens up like a lot of unique dialogue because you're a cleric of the god that the country doesn't like anymore. And also, if I remember correctly too, one of the consequences after the war was people stopped hearing from Aethys. He's gone silent, this
Yeah,
god.
right.
And that's something you learn from Adair almost immediately as well. So it's kind of fun to play his cleric with all of that background going on in the game.
I think that's one of the payoffs playing CRPGs, especially compared to read books and fantasy, because you have an agency. You cannot affect the story in a book, even though it's very interesting to read books as well. But if it's well written, I mean, like the Pillars of Eternity, then it becomes really, really good. It also is that after Saints War, or I think in connection to Saints War, there was a purge
Yeah.
Against Eothas, Eothas supporters, I say now, but they who
Yeah.
align with Eothas.
Mhm.
And I think Ed, he says in the beginning that since he is, as I understand him, he still, supports Eothas, but he doesn't believe in what is played out politically. I don't think that's pure. But
Right.
so he wants to join us who play as the Watcher, to get a second chance, so he doesn't get killed or anything like that. So he can just equally help, and he wants to find his brother as well. What happened
Right.
to his brother?
Yeah, because I believe that was his companion quest, was to figure out what happened to his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of interesting because of so you kind of mentioned it earlier, like there's a really rich kind of pantheon within this world.
Mm.
And Aethys is one of those in the main pantheon. And the things that he's kind of the god of are like light, dawn, birth, rebirth, redemption. Which is kind of in contrast to what happened with this holy war and one country trying to conquer another. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting to think about like what that god represents and then what was happening like in the world.
Yeah, and I think if you think lore is tough, you don't need to worry, because the premise in the beginning is always on the individual characters. Then the lore, they add the lore to everything, and then
Yeah.
you can find a kind of wiki in the game where you can read about more things about the
Mhm.
lore and so on. So you don't need to understand the lore in the beginning to be able to play
Yes.
the game. You can just go with the flow. You also meet Aloth, and I think he's a bit funny because he's a more hilarious character, more funny character. Eder is quite serious character, even if he has humor. I think Eder
Mhm.
is actually in a fight when you Aloth is in a fight when you meet him the first
Yep.
time. So I think that says something about Aloth as well, and maybe it's critical role actors, as you said. So but
Yeah.
I didn't know until today it was the same actor, so I was impressed by that actually.
Yeah, he does both those characters. And then if you are a fan of Critical Role, in the second game, most of the companions are voiced by Critical Role players. So
Mm.
that was kind of fun, as because I'm a fan of Critical Role, so it's kind of a cool connection between the game and the players. But yeah, Aloth, I loved his. I think he's one of my favorite characters in terms of his story and his progression. And I'm not going to spoil anything for it, but when you first meet him, there's this really interesting thing that happens that you progressively learn more about throughout the story, where he is talking to these people at this bar and like trying to leave peacefully, and then suddenly his voice changes. There's a completely different accent, and the person's the he speaks very differently, and he basically kind of like curses out these thugs that he's trying to be peaceful with, which then instigates the fight where you try to save him, and you have no idea what happened. And
Mm.
like I said, you learn kind of what happens later on, which is super super interesting. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of funny how he will switch how he speaks every now and then, and
Mm.
they, yeah, it's just really well done, I thought.
I also think they made it very good if you played tabletop RPGs, the combos of characters. I think they are very broad, so it's
Yeah,
highly likely that there are that kind of personalities in the group. But
yep.
in Gilded Veil, we meet two characters, and the animancer that is in close to the tree that we mentioned, this
Hmm.
woman called Caldara Beranzi. She starts to talk about see if I spoil something now. a guy called Merwald, for example, that she talks about. That is very interesting for the watcher. So I'm thinking, the next step for the watcher, if we talk about it very quickly, what happens is that he comes to Gilded Vale, meets those two characters, gets directed to search for this Merwald, which can have clues for maybe what's happened to our main character, the person we are playing. And so the journey goes on from there, and he also meets a lot of new characters that we will introduce as well here. So, do you think we can say something more? It's very difficult not to spoil things. I realize.
I know.
Talking about it.
Yeah, because once you move from Gilded Vale, you really start to get into the story and all the complexes of that. So maybe we save more of that until we get to the spoiler section.
Yes. But when you, sorry,
I was just gonna say, but it's quite the setup, and all of that happens within the first few hours of the game, because there's that tutorial section. It doesn't necessarily feel like a tutorial section in terms of the story, but where you have the two temporary companions that both die at the end. That part's really quick. It's quite short, but it sets up everything that Shrinkot mentioned at the beginning, and then you get to Gilded Vale, which is the first place you go after that, and then from there the world really starts to open up. And it's such a rich game, and with a really complicated story. So I don't want to spoil anything else if people are wanting to play it until we get to the spoiler section.
One thing I think we can say now, I'm doing it, so let's see, is that in Gilded Vale we get information about the Hollowborn crisis, not so much, but basically children born without souls. We don't know so much more about that, but there is something with souls here, and we also, when we sleep at the inn, we also have strange dreams.
Yes.
That we don't understand yet. Right?
Yeah, and you learn about the Hollowborn crisis from your first conversation with Adair, and from the dwarven woman who's hung in the tree, because that's why she was executed. Was the I forget, the Duke or the leader of the Gilded Vale. She was sent to try to treat his wife, or to treat the child, and whatever she tried didn't work, and so he just hung her because he's not a very nice guy. But yeah, and that is it's like a current event that's happening in Deerwood, and it quickly kind of becomes a major part of the story, in addition to the main character trying to figure out what it means to be a watcher, and then also who that mysterious figure was you meet when you are awakened. So you kind of have these different thread lines that are all going on in the story, and they weave together in really interesting ways and lead to just in my opinion, a very amazing story.
And you have in the Gilded Vale, you have in the middle of the city I think it's a ruin now, but it's a temple. So
of Aethys.
It's a temple with a lot of secrets, you could say, right?
It's just, there's so much. It's such a cool game.
And this is just a few screens we are talking about now, if we talk about Gilded Vale. So I think that's in itself is amazing how much they put into this game and the space of the game. But they are moving on, and when they leave Gilded Vale, they quite quickly meet a priest called Durance. So, and he's a interesting person, I would say. He's one of your companions. He's actually, it was a funny description of him on the wiki, which I found very amusing. He's totally super ugly. that was the description of him. But he's a priest. He's following a god called Magran, and he is more or less an ascetic, I think, priest. He has his own teachings. It's called Duran's teachings, and I don't know if I should spoil too much. He has a very important role when it comes to the Saints' War, you could say.
Yep.
So just stay there, I think. But he's also a very aggressive character. He has a lot of enemies. He's angry at everyone, basically.
He has a lot of opinions, especially about anything you do. He's not afraid to share them, often with a lot of colorful language. And he also has really interesting opinions about the god he follows. And is not afraid to share those either. He's a very outspoken character.
How is it in Pillars? They can leave in Deadfire. They can leave the party, right?
Yeah, and I think in Pillars 2, I think in Pillars as well, the original game, I think they can leave if you upset them enough. But I actually don't remember now. But yeah, in Pillars of Eternity 2, you have there's a system that tracks your relationship with each character, and if you piss them off enough by doing things they don't like, they will just leave.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah.
I think Durance is easily provoked, you could say.
Yeah, he would have been a hard one to have with that system.
Yeah, I usually play quite good people. Now I've changed a bit, as I've told you, Rick, when I'm testing myself a bit. But so far, he's tricky because he sees enemies in a lot of different people, and he has a lot of opinions about politics as well. But then later on, we are trying to go through the characters, as you understand, who are listening, and not so long after that, there is a guy called Karnarua, right?
Yeah, and he was one of my favorites in this first game. You meet him at Cadnua, which is kind of the next location you're told to go to after the Gilded Veil. And that place becomes really important for the game. I won't go into spoilers for that, though. But you meet him there. He is so in this game you have humans, you have elves, you have dwarves, like you get in a lot of fantasy games. But then you have other races that are unique to this world. One of them being the Aumawa, I think is how you say it, which are like very large humanoids with different colored skin depending on kind of where they are. And he has kind of like, I think, yellowish skin from what I remember. And they all have very sharp, like all of their teeth are very sharp. Like basically all of them look like canine teeth. But they're giant. They're very tall and supposedly quite strong. And he's one of those. And he comes from a culture that's the Rauatai, which are very, I don't know, how would you describe the Rauatai? They're like very pragmatic, practical, like dogmatic people, industrious, but in like a really controlled way. But he's not like that at all. He's just very curious, and he wants to like experience the world and learn as much as he can, and he's got quite a jovial personality. He's kind of like, in some ways, like your stereotypical bard, but from a culture that wouldn't necessarily have a lot of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a quite odd character, I think. He has his voice acting is very exaggerated noble, I think. He has a very
Yeah,
special voice, and he has this. He has magic incantations
yeah.
that he sings as well. So I think Bard is a good description, but also very what do you say in English? He's very he's a funny guy, you know. You don't know if you can trust him really. You don't know if he speaks truth or not in the beginning, at least, I think.
Yeah, he is very interesting. Quite the character. And yeah, his class is one of the unique ones to this system as well. He's called a chanter, which is kind of like a bard, except when you think about like a bard in like D&D, they have spells and they can use weapons and then they've got like their kind of bardic inspiration, their songs and whatnot. But the
Hmm.
way that the chanters work is, I thought, was really cool, where they don't have spells like a cleric or a wizard has. They have chant. So when they start combat, they start chanting, and they can alternate between, I think, like 1 and 3 different chants, and those chants provide buffs or debuffs to the party or to the enemies. And as they're chanting, they build up power, and when they build up enough power, they can do these other kind of I forget what they call them, um, but these other kind of song elements
Hmm.
that invocations is what they're called.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
have other effects. Usually, those are like the powerful ones. So you could have an invocation that allows you to summon allies, like summon a mini dragon or something, and that
Hmm.
takes so much power build up in order to do it. Or you can have one where they like create a burst of energy that hits all the enemies. Um, so it's a really it's cool because you're chaining together these song components and then releasing it at the end, and then you start over and you chain together the song components.
Hmm.
So it's a really kind of cool class, that's quite different from your traditional bard, with like a really interesting kind of fun character.
Yeah. So, and and they are very proud, I think. I mean, his voice is very,
Hmm.
very proud of him. If you have some notes here on that stuff. Because he's looking after this book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's looking for this ancient text, um, that is important to the history and culture of his people, the Rawatai.
Hmm.
The Tanvi Oratoa, I think it was
Yeah.
called.
Yes.
Um, and that's his kind of personal quest.
Yeah. And he is followed by a strange group. I think that was the one thing that was a bit tricky with him when you met him first. I mean,
Right,
usually you don't say no to companion. I have never. Do you do? Have you done
right.
that? Do you say no
I,
to
no, I've never
being
said no to a
companions?
companion. Yeah,
I don't know if you
I get. Yeah,
can, but
you.
you can maybe.
I think you can say no to all of them,
Hmm.
but I've never done that because I like the companions.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, they add to the story. Um, yeah, I think many of the places that they mention in the beginning, different temples or ruins and so on, without spoiling things, there is a lot to do in relation to them. That is side quests and so on. So the game, I mean, the
Hmm.
game is huge. Even the first game is actually quite big, even
Yeah,
though it's Deadfire is even bigger. Um, you had another character too that you were fond of, right?
yeah. So her name is Pelagina. Um, she. It's interesting because like I like her, but I also don't like her. She's a very interesting character, and I think she has a really cool story. And she's another one of these interesting species in this world. She's called a godlike, and godlike are, um, when you have like a regular mortal. Usually, I think they're human, but I don't think they have to be. but they've been blessed or cursed, depending on who you talk to, with by a god, and they have physical attributes or deformities based on who that god is. So she's an avian godlike, which means she's tied to the god Halia. Um, and so when you meet her, she's got, instead of hair, she's got like feathers that come out of her head, and they even kind of go around her eyes as well. And that's how a lot of the godlike like manifests. Is they've got the game, because it's a CRPG. You mostly look at portraits of the characters, and a lot of the godlikes, their faces are very altered. You might have these horns, or their heads might be on fire or glowing, depending on the god that they are like. So she's a godlike, and she is a member of the Valian Republics, which is where a lot of those really Italian-sounding characters come from. To me, the Valian Republic reminds me a lot of the Italian city-states during the Renaissance, like Florence and Naples and all that. They're very mercantile-focused, economically focused and driven. And she's also a character that carries over into the next game. And I think she has like a really interesting storyline, which I won't spoil. But also there's a lot of interesting things about her because she is a godlike, which like some people think that godlikes are cursed and they are feared or they're hated. Other people think that it's a blessing. It probably also depends on which god. So if it's one of the more like, there's not like good gods and bad gods, but like one of the more friendly gods or gods that have like nicer domains, then maybe it's more of a blessing. But if it's like the god of diseases and that sort of thing, like that's probably going to be a curse. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I found there was a lot of interesting things about her in that way.
Yeah, they are very deep, the characters, I think. All of them.
Yeah. So what did you think of her?
I didn't play so much with her in the first game. I've been acquainting myself with her in the second game, though, a lot so far. As Rick knows, and maybe I finished the first game. I haven't finished Deadfire, basically because I'm side questing. I've been side questing for plus 50 hours now. I've done some main quests, but just enjoying myself in the archipelago. Yeah. When I looked through the my quest summary in the game for the first game, I realized I hadn't done much. It was the other way around. I hadn't done so many side quests. I've gone for the main quest mostly. So I have a lot to do in the first game, if I want to as well. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't think I had her in my party. I'm not sure exactly where you find her in Defiance Bay, or is it somewhere else?
I think it is in Defiance Bay. Yeah, because I think she is because she's stationed with the like ambassadors for the Valian republics in Defiance Bay. Defiance Bay being the capital city of Deerwood.
Did you meet Sagani, by the way?
In one or two?
In the first game.
What was she?
She's a hunter. She is...
Oh, the companion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I had all the companions, and I did all of their quests except one because I didn't realize how to get his quest, and just kind of forgot that he even had one. But yeah, I loved all the companion quests. But yeah, I do remember meeting her.
Yeah, they are great. So if you're still here, you probably are interested in the game, I suppose. So I think that's a nice thing with the CRPGs with all the companions, which
Yeah.
makes it even, I would say, better than some books as well. Should we jump into lore concepts? Because we've
Yeah.
touched a bit on the Watcher and Souls and Hollowborn and things like that. So
Yeah.
should we jump into Souls and Animancy first? We have a few
Yeah.
topics here, maybe not in this order, but the Adra, the pillars. I mean, it's called pillars of eternity for a reason, and we
Yep.
have the maybe not, but politics history briefly at least, and the pantheon and the world building in general. But should we start with
Yeah.
the souls? Do you want to start a bit about your take on that?
Yeah. So the way that the game deals with souls is really kind of it's a very central part of the game, and you learn some things very quickly, and then other things you kind of learn throughout as you play. So I'll stick to kind of the things that you learn quickly. Um, so reincarnation is a big thing in this world where you die, your soul moves on, and then it re-inhabits another life in the future. Now, that can be an animal, that can be another mortal, it can be a variety of things. And there's actually this really funny moment in the second game where, in the second game, you interact with one of the gods at the very beginning. It's like the first thing that happens, and she gives you a quest. She tells you, I want you to do this. And you can just say, no, I don't want to help you. And if you do that, you die and you get reincarnated as a cat. And then that's game
Mhm,
over.
mhm,
That's the whole thing.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, so there's this they call it the wheel, which is the reincarnation cycle.
mhm,
Um, and but there's also like there's all this magic around souls in the game where, and that's where animancy, so animancy is like the magic of like soul magic essentially, and it's in the game it's more of like a science than anything,
mhm,
um because it's not like a normal magic for most people where you can like use your willpower to cast a spell or something like that, or say some words and cast a spell. Animancy for most people requires complicated machinery and technology to harness and activate. It's not something most people can just naturally do something with. um, so it's almost got like a steampunk kind of aesthetic to it, with these complicated
mhm,
machineries that animancers are using to do all kinds of things, like heal the sick, or cure people who have gone insane, or or try to deal with the Hollowborn crisis.
mhm.
Um, so it's just this really cool part of the world. I thought that's you don't necessarily see in a lot of other games. Really getting into this soul and what happens when you die and that sort of thing. I don't know. What
Yeah,
did you think?
yeah, I think that was. I mean, I really enjoy this. As people who follow the channel know, with the spirituality and songs of reincarnation and all this stuff is triggering and interesting to me when they put it into things like games. Um, I think you said that, but you as a watcher can see into other souls, and that is
Right.
actually backers. I mean, Kickstarter, when people were backing the game,
Yeah.
it's and you can find their names in on nameplates in dungeons
Hmm.
and so on. People who have backed the game.
Yeah.
I haven't read all those stories, but it's interesting. So you can see into souls, and you can. I did that in the beginning, but then maybe now I'm not doing that too much. But some stories are a
Hmm.
bit fun. I think the backers has written them themselves, or at least the drafts, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Because yeah. So as a watcher, and this is how you interact with that dead dwarven woman who's been hung. You can interact with souls,
Mm,
and with certain characters, you can see their past lives. So most characters, they have no idea what their past lives were. It basically gets erased when they die, and then they start fresh. But a
mm.
watcher can sometimes look at those characters and look at their past lives and what they did beforehand. They can see those echoes, which is really kind of cool.
Mm. And I think the souls, I mean, that's the main mystery of the game. So if you're not into anything of this, it might become difficult for you. But with that said, you said steampunkish vibe. I think that's very true with the artwork and how to say. You can get the impression that the pantheon and so on is, inspired by, for example, the Iliad or the Greek mythology and things. In a way, they are. It is
Yeah.
like that. But it's also a very strong, you could say, secular tone to this,
Yeah.
which we can't say so much about yet, but maybe later. But that's interesting. There is not, they are not. Everyone is not in awe of the religion and the gods. There are skepticism here as well. So when it comes to souls as well, I think.
Yeah, and you definitely you see a lot of like science and scientific progress in this world, which is also kind of interesting, and different kinds of science heavily associated with magic, but also science kind of independent of magic. And there's different forms of magic throughout the world too, which mostly you get through like the classes, wizards casting spells through their spell books, or druids casting magic through like manipulating natural forces. But then there are different, like more unique sources of magic, depending on the different classes too. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff like that.
And I think if we move on a bit to maybe world building, I think we can, because the Edra pillars, they are from ancient times, and there is this strong theme of colonization, right? Where civilizations outside Aedir, or what's called Aedir, has come, and there are tribes and tribal people, original people staying there, who has created these ancient sites where the pillars are as well. So it's difficult to say too much about this, but basically the invaders make money on this because you can make a lot of beautiful things of the Aedra.
Right.
When it comes to art and I think furniture and everything like that. So it's a bit like the West going to Europeans going to America. Some kind of feeling, I think.
Yeah, and you get that in both games, but in very different ways. Because in this game, you've got the tribes of Air Glanfath, I think, or something like that, who are the ones protecting these ancient structures and ruins, which you encounter like immediately. That's how that intro caravan gets attacked. So you've got the conflict there between groups like the Valian Republic or the Dirvidians and the Red Saras, which broke off from that larger empire, the Adirian Empire. But then in the second game, in the archipelago, you have the Huana, who are native to the area. But then you've got all these outside forces coming in and trying to take advantage of all the Aedra that is present within the Deadfire archipelago. So you've got the Deadfire Company, which is part of Rauatai, and you've got the Valian Republics again coming in, and they're all trying to colonize and kind of reap as much as they can from these areas. So colonization it's a huge theme in the second game, but it's also still very present in the first game.
Yeah, and I think one aspect of the second game, we don't talk so much about Deadfire in this video, but it's the class perspective. I'm not sure about that in the first game, but in Neketaka, it's called, a city in the archipelago, which is very important for the story. And there you are in the slums called the Gullet, and there you can side with the poor people, basically, and doing a lot of things to help them or support them. Or you can do the other way around, because the society there is very hierarchical and
it's almost like a caste system, right?
Yeah, a caste system, basically, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
because you've got the like rulers, and you've got the priests, and you've got the warriors, and then you've got basically like the laborers and and they each have a place in society and what they are and aren't allowed to do and that kind of thing. And yeah, you get really immersed in that world when you get to, especially, yeah, the Huana capital city of Nikitaka. And yeah, it's really interesting.
So yeah, you can make. I think that's really good with the Pillars games, that they have this political, more or less, depending on how you view it. But you can interpret it in that way. But you can also choose sides. So you don't need to choose a side. You can choose sides. So depending on what you think, or if you just want to role play as well, so you don't need to do as you think, so to speak. Yeah. So. I mean, that's the same, the colonial aspect with not only Europeans coming to America, but, everyone who's colonized a country all over the world or a place, tribe. The tribe sees their natural resources as something divine, but the invader sees it as something they can make profit upon. So that's a big theme. It becomes clearer also in Avowed, which we won't talk about, because you haven't played that at all, right?
Not yet. I've been waiting until they're done with any DLC or patches and that sort of thing.
Another big thing of the world building is the Pantheon.
Yes.
How did you perceive that when you played and are playing?
I always, and this is something I think we have in common. I love learning about the pantheons of the different worlds that I read about or play games in, and the Pantheon definitely plays a very big role in the Pillars of Eternity games, especially the second game, because this is a world where mortals can interact with the gods. So like I loved all of those interactions, especially in the second game. But you do interact with them in the first game as well. And each of these gods, they're not one track kind of gods. Like you have a god of war or a god of peace or whatever. Like they're all very complicated and multidimensional. So for example, there is a goddess of war, but she's also the goddess of purification and transformation and fire. And the goddess of that encompasses kind of peace is also like creativity and song and invention and stuff like that. So there's a lot of complexity to the gods. And I don't know. I found this pantheon to be especially interesting with the different kind of portfolios or domains that each of the gods have, and what they are associated with, and what their function is in the game world, and that sort of thing. And there are definitely gods that you would not want to run into, and gods that would be great to run into. Like the one of entropy and disasters and bad luck. You probably don't want to hang out with him. But others are different. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's really cool.
But there is maybe that's a different god. I'm looking here in my notes about the gods, but one god I really like. I mean, how they worship is Ondra. It's a goddess of the oceans. I'm not sure if it was the one you mentioned, but forgotten things, loss, mourning. But the thing you want to lose, you bring to the altar, so to speak, and sacrifice. I thought that was just a very fun and interesting. I'm not sure if there is some kind of god like that. I haven't heard of that in other religions or past religions on Earth, but I thought just the mechanism psychologically was very interesting. I suppose it might work for a lot of people as well. So,
Right. Well, and she's an especially interesting one, and something that I think the the games does like something really interesting with, which is true of the real world, where so in this in a lot of fantasy worlds you have a pantheon, and I think you Stephen Erickson has talked about this too, where in a lot of fantasy worlds there's like a singular pantheon that everybody worships, and they kind of all worship them the same way, regardless of what culture they are, which is not very realistic, because when you look at like our planet, our world, there are a myriad of religions, and even religions like Christianity, which all worship the same God, but they have very different ways in which they believe in how they worship and all and so on and so forth. So, there's a lot of disagreements even within Christianity. Um, and one of the things that you see in this game is, between the first one and the second one, um, there are different kind of aspects or depictions of the gods. Like Andra in the first game is much more about the forgetting things and loss and mourning. But in the second game, when you're on the archipelago in a very seafaring culture, she's very much about the ocean and the tides and the seas. And she has both of those aspects, but the different cultures kind of think about her differently. And they actually depict her differently. And in the second game, she's depicted as like a lanternfish kind of humanoid, which is kind of interesting. So I think she's a really interesting example because you see very different aspects of her in the two games and how she's worshipped. So I really liked that this game like kind of explored that, how different cultures, even though it's the same pantheon, they worship the gods very differently. So it feels more realistic to me.
I saw a fun critique about the game. It's obviously things you and I like, but they were, annoyed. The criticizer was annoyed, or the writer was annoyed that they had gone, bananas or on the lore. So there was no end to the lore. Like things like everything is complex, and the gods can have different dimensions and meaning. I think that's one of the beautiful things with the game. But even if I can understand the gamer's perspective, he wanted something
Right.
simple, and then everything was more complicated than he ever thought it could have been.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair to the game, you don't have to interact with any of that. You can just play the game and play the main story, play the quests, and not have to worry about any of that. I think it adds a lot of depth to this game, but you can ignore it all. But yeah, it is a very complicated world with a lot of complex ideas and like world building aspects. It's a very deep world, in my opinion.
I think that might mean, I'm not sure, that if the CRPGs, especially CRPGs, not only, but video games, if they are well written, like Pillars are, it can be even more nuanced and more layers than in many books, not all books, but in many books at least, because you also can take different roles, and you can take different sides and try different opinions, ways how to act different scenes out.
Yeah, because I mean, there are different conclusions that can happen in both games depending on the choices you make. And I won't get into what those are, but there is quite a bit of player agency in the games, which I think can allow for some pretty good replayability. I think probably the second game has it even more than the first game, because there's a lot of different factions in the second game, and the game can be quite different depending on how you interact with those factions, as like you and I have talked about. And actually, I haven't replayed the second game, but all like us talking about
It's
Pillars
a
as much as
huge
we
case.
have
Yeah.
is making me want to. But yeah, they are very, very long games. But they're just so good. And like I loved replaying the first one when I did, because you just there's there's a lot to these games, and there's a lot of things that you might miss in the first game, the first playthrough, and you get in the second, which is kind of like what you're experiencing with the Malazan reread, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't talk so much about Malazan here, but we can touch upon it a little bit. They are similar because the depth is huge, and your perspective change during a reread or a
Yes.
if you play through the game or if you replay the game again, you will get more things, and that means you can make other choices, you can understand things differently, and so on. So they have a lot of similarities. Actually, Stephen Erickson and Ian Seselmont, they were, as you know, but role players, TTRPG role players from the beginning. So this quest-like structure that you find in Pillars and in Baldur's Gate and other games as well, that you find in the Malazan books as well. So
True.
they are similar in that sense. So it works better in games than in books, though, with the quest structure, I think. Should we head into should we say something more about lore? There is a lot we can talk for, maybe 6 hours.
There is.
This. No problem. But
I think talking about the gods is a good place to segue into the spoilers, I think.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, everyone, it's spoiler time. So if you don't want to know, and we will talk a lot about the ending, so that's good to know. So if you don't want to listen to that, so please turn this off, and you can come back when you have finished the Pillars of Eternity one, because that's the ending we will talk about. So spoilers ahead. So you have been warned. So we will move into that now.
Cool. Yeah. So, thinking about replaying, like what you were just saying about, how you're rereading Malazan and you have more perspective. Now, I haven't finished the Malazan series. I'm only on the second book. But that is definitely the experience I had playing this game a second time, because the revelation at the end of the first game completely shifts, I think, how you think about the world and the lore. And so when you're playing it that second time, a lot of that is in your mind as you're going through. And what that revelation is that this ancient civilization that we've mentioned a few times, they went on a quest to figure out what the gods, are there gods, what are the gods, and that sort of thing. And they discovered that there was nothing. There were no gods. And so then they made a pantheon of gods through this incredibly powerful and very destructive magical ritual. They created the pantheon that exists. And there are these, how many gods are there? There are 11 gods that they created. And they are like gods, essentially. Like they're incredibly powerful. They exist beyond the realm. They interact with souls and all of that. But yeah, they were created, and that fact has been hidden from the world. And that is the big, like, reveal at the end of the first game, that this has happened, which I thought was just super interesting and mind blowing. I don't know, like what was your reaction when you found that out?
I mean, I think that changes so much how you interpret what the companions, how they react on things. I mean, how you should, especially Durance. I mean, about Megran and about we can talk about that now, the Godhammer bomb, which was used in the Saints' War and Durance was the only one surviving from that event. The relationship between Megran and Aethas and Boudica, that is, I mean, he's really upset there in the end. I think you can encourage him in some way. I haven't managed to do that, so he's still angry. But I think that also your own motivation, because if you have played the game as a traditional fantasy where the pantheon is real, if you really role play it, I used to do that. So, I mean, I've gone to some temples and so on, and then I realized in the end that it was not maybe for real, depending on what you believe, of course, in our world too, about religion. So,
Right.
yeah, I think it makes you more of a if when you replay it, that you're more like an I'd say anthropologue, watching everything, because you know that everything is made. But then I also think it's a bit complicated, my thoughts there, because first of all, when I first knew about that or got the information about that, I thought maybe they were more like ascendants in Malazan Book of the Fallen. So if you don't know about
Right.
ascendants, because they still have divine power. And then I thought maybe more a philosophical take on it. But if they are man-made, so to speak, and we don't know, I mean, some people know, some people don't know or don't believe in the gods in our real world here on Earth. But you can argue that the gods are, made up here too, but people believe in them, and the idea from the Glenn Fathens, right? It was who created this, Theos as well.
The Ingwithans are the ones who
Oh yeah,
created
sorry,
it.
in Britain,
Yeah.
right, sorry. But they wanted to create some kind of meaning for people. So
Right.
if I thought that the war never could come back again, for example, and so on, things like that. Because before this pantheon, there were other pantheons, but if I got it right, but the two
Yeah.
we were about, so who was right and wrong.
Right, because there were even though when the Ingwithans tried to search for the gods and found nothing, there were still a lot of cultures that believed in different pantheons, and would go to war about their different beliefs and whatnot. So they created this pantheon to give that kind of purpose and that kind of stability, and to create like a unifying religion. But of course, that didn't happen, and there are different, even though now there is an actual, not physical is not the right word, but an existing pantheon. It still didn't create that kind of peace or stability, because you have even the gods themselves like have their own motivations and their own things that they're trying to pursue, sometimes at the cost of their other gods. And so it didn't do that, but it did create these beings that people can worship, and and these beings can have direct impacts on the world. So it's kind of one of these kind of interesting things where, and this is something that you do see in various fantasy worlds, and I always think it's really interesting when you explore it. In this world, and in other worlds, like the idea of being an atheist is kind of not, it's not the same as like here, because there are actual beings that you can see, or that live on the world, or do things. So you're just denying. I'm trying to think of how to explain this, and maybe you kind of get what I'm saying, but like it's a difference between saying that they don't exist, or just saying that you don't like them. Like you acknowledge that they exist because you kind of can't, but you choose to not worship them because you don't like them, I guess.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and I think this is kind of a secular, I don't know, a secular pantheon, or a secular religious take and Pillars of Eternity. If you, in the second game in Deadfire, when you're at Soulspire in Nekitaka, it's obviously, I mean, it's described as they are doing research on the Adra and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So they combine science with belief. So it's mixed in that sense. But I think this reveal makes it's a bit mind bending. When I try to talk about it, it's mind bending as well, because it's difficult to how to relate to the world. And you can then, when you make choices in the game, when you replay, you can do different choices, I suppose, which refers to what you now know. So you maybe don't go all in with the religion and the pantheon. Maybe you are more skeptical, for example. You can have an atheist approach in the pillars, as I see it. So the answers you can choose.
Right. But and what's kind of cool about the second game is you can so the premise of the second game is that Aethys has kind of gone rogue and is on a path of destruction to do something, which I don't remember if you fully understand what that something is in the beginning, but he's going to do something. The other gods don't like whatever he's doing. And you're basically charged by one of the gods to stop Aethys. And then throughout the game, you're interacting with the other gods regularly. Like you have these really cool scenes where all the gods are in front of you and you're talking to them. And knowing what you know from the first game, that they were created by mortals, but they are in fact immortal beings. It's just like a really cool dynamic, because like they could kill you with a thought. Like they are, still these ultra powerful divine beings. So like you don't want to just, be flippant with them, because they can end your life and do all kinds of huge destructive things. But at the same time, they didn't always exist. And there's really cool dynamic there, I think. What did you think of those kinds of moments in Pillars 2 as you've kind of come across them?
I think I don't know if that's why I've been roaming around, unconsciously, but I haven't taken the main quest so serious yet. Maybe I'm a bit stuck in wanting it to be a bit more divine than it is. I mean, discovering ancient sites and ruins and so on. So let's see. But I think it's a bit strange, because even if you know that it's man-made, so to speak, or it was made up, the pantheon, they are still acting, but the implications of their actions doesn't seem as serious to me as it doesn't seem like it's just as much at stake as it is in the first game. I don't know. It's more my personal interpretation of the game, since you can see through this charade, you could say.
So I find that interesting, because would you say the same about the gods in Malazan? Because a lot of them, as I understand it, they went through the path of ascendancy from potentially being mortals and then became gods. And then people worship them and they have major roles in the world. So like, do you think of the gods in Pillars of Eternity differently than you do the gods in Malazan?
They are a bit different, but I think in the books of Malazan, they have Ericsson has and ENC has the opportunity to flesh them out a bit, because they become extremely human and confused, like in the Nordic pantheon, for example, or Norse religion, so Norse mythology. You really don't get that feeling yet in Pillars, because I don't think it's possible to do that in a video game. They could have done it with movie clips and so on, if they had, like, I don't know, like in Final Fantasy, something like that. And they could elaborate on that. So I don't mean it's meaningless, but it feels still. I'm more skeptical. I'm more careful and cautious before I just choose the obvious divine alternative in a conversation. So I'm not as devoted anymore like I was.
No, that's fair.
So, so that's That's how it affects me, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of I'm trying to remember, because there were times I think when I played the game where the gods would like make certain demands of the character, and I'd be like, well, screw you. Like, I'm my own person. I can do what I want. I know your secret. But yeah, I think in some ways what it did was it leveled the playing field between your interactions as the watcher and to the gods. Like, you still weren't on equal standing because they were infinitely more powerful than you, but it did kind of level it more because you knew their origin, you knew what they were. And it maybe did take some of that awe out of them. So I think that was kind of an interesting thing. And I really liked how in the second game, knowing what you know from the first game, you had all of those really direct interactions with the gods.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really well done.
But then I think the second game is more realistic, at least because it's very European, I would say. I mean, maybe, I don't know if you think like that, living outside Europe, but for me, it's obvious. It's Italy, Spain. You have to search for these ruins. It's more like when you go to to Greece, I mean, to look for the ancient Greece, you see all these ruins that exist today, or to Rome, for example. You have to search for more for the divine. I think in the first game that came to you like in a normal fantasy, so to speak. But in Deadfire, you are more like like the colonialists, from Spain looking for America, obviously, because you're in the archipelago, I think.
Yeah, I think the first game had a lot more kind of like of that kind of ethereal atmosphere, especially with like the Hollowborn crisis and like all this mystique around the Leaden Key and who Theos was and all of that. Whereas in the second game, in a lot of ways, like that veil has been lifted. A lot of that mystique is gone. And yeah, it is more like maybe rooted. And focused on the like real world aspects of the world, I guess. If that, like I can definitely, I think it totally makes sense how you're thinking about it, at least to me.
Did your I mean, have you approached the game much differently? I don't know if you replayed it since the reveal, but maybe you played some parts, or maybe you haven't. I'm not sure yet.
The first game or the second game?
Let's say the first.
In the first game, I did beat it once and then I played it again, so I did know the ending when I played it the second time. I think what it did for me when I played it the second time is that's when I decided to make my main character a cleric, because I wanted to see how being a worshiper of Aethys interacted with the main story itself, because it added a whole bunch of extra dialogue. And I think I took my time exploring the game a lot more the second time too, because I made sure to complete all the companion quests and all the side quests I could. I did the DLC, the White Marches DLC, which added like a bunch of cool lore. And I don't remember if I think I did change some of my decisions because I knew more about what the consequences of them were. But I think I still sided with the same god in both playthroughs, though. And like what you do with the souls at the end. But I did make different other decisions throughout the game.
That's interesting. I think the how I mean, some games that are replayable when people ask if is it replayable, it's mostly from a point of view in the gaming
Hmm.
community. Can you make other choices? Can you experience
Right.
things in new ways? Are there new cutscenes? All these kind of things. But in Pillars game, it's more about how you interpret what you experience that changes, and
Hmm.
also, of course, some events. But I think that is interesting. There are probably more video games like this, but I want to think that this is a bit unique, that it changes your philosophical attitude to the game, basically, what you experience.
Yeah, because like thinking about some of the other games I've played and beaten, there's not another game that comes to mind that has such a fundamental shift on the way you think about the lore of the world as this game. Like thinking about the Witcher games, and I'm not going to spoil anything for any of these games, but like
Mm,
what happens in the ending of the Witcher games, or like Skyrim or the Dragon Age games, or
mm,
different games like that.
mm,
There wasn't that kind of like, they were awesome. Like I enjoyed the endings of all those games. They were great conclusions to the stories, and like really cool, world ending things.
mm,
But it didn't necessarily alter your perception of the reality of those worlds like this game did.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
One aspect that I was thinking of when I got the reveal is the leaden key or leading key.
Hmm.
Their task to uphold, that people believe in this pantheon, and they
Right.
are
Keep the secret.
aggressive against other people. I think that was, obviously they were aggressive during the game, especially after Defiance Bay, but still it changed a little bit on how I viewed the leading key, and also of course
Hmm.
Theos, of course. So mm.
Yeah. What were some of the big things that changed for you, and like how you perceived them after learning what the secret was that they were protecting?
It's a bit complicated if you really think about
Hmm.
it. It seems more like a cult. That's number one, I think, and of course, a
Hmm.
very aggressive one. Aggressive one. So I didn't really enjoy them, of course, during the game either. But maybe they were more mysterious and exciting. They were more portrayed as maniacs, I think, after the reveal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's difficult to say about, because they are like evil anyway, and that raised them to a new level of evilness, from my point of view.
Yeah, because they did, especially the leader, some like huge atrocities throughout his infinite life, um, to maintain the secret of the gods.
Mm,
Um, but what's kind of interesting, if I'm remembering correctly, you and all the companions learn the secret of the gods in the game, and you
mm.
put an end to Theos. But you don't then turn around and start broadcasting the secret either. Like you're not
Yeah,
necessarily fighting to ensure it stays a secret, but you're not broadcasting it either. So like in the immediacy of the ending of the game, the state of the world isn't changing, because it's not like suddenly all the people of the world realize that the gods were created.
mm,
So I guess all you've done in that sense is you've eliminated the force that was protecting the secret, so that others could potentially find out that secret themselves,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
it makes sense, and I think it's a obvious reference to our contemporary world, but in a different way, because in medieval Europe, for example, where Christianity was the norm, and it was very, also protected, and
Hmm.
you know, uh, witches were burned, for example, and
Right.
heretics and so on. So there is some kind of parallel there. And now in the world today, people are believers or non-believers, and not everywhere in the world, but in most parts of the world, it's okay to believe in what you want to. So we
Right.
could say that the veil is gone, like in Pillars of Eternity, when you get the reveal, even if it's more stated and open and broadcasted, you could say, in our world. So I think it
Right.
opens up for interesting discussions outside the game, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Should we cover something more in the spoiler section, or are we happy, do you think?
Is there another topic that you're interested in, or was that kind of the big spoiler one for you?
That was the big one. I think then there are, of course, things that what happened actually with the Migran and the God Hammer and
Right.
Bodica. I think that's maybe difficult to. I don't know if you have perspective. Do you have perspectives on any interpretation of the NPCs? If they were wrong in their interpretations when we got the reveal?
I don't remember. Yeah, because there are, when it comes to Mogren and the God Hammer and the implications of that, and Wyden's War and the Saints' War, there is actually some interesting things there that you don't learn about until this actually Deadfire. That it comes up in one of the DLC. So I don't want to talk about that now because you haven't played it. So that would definitely be something interesting to chat more about in the future, once you've played that DLC, if you decide to play it.
Yeah.
At least I'm pretty sure it was one of the DLC, but I remember it happened in the second game. You learn a bit more about what went on in that conflict. But yeah, I don't remember if there was any NPC's reaction that I disagreed with. And I think for a lot of them, they probably still, like, a lot of them had to still process what they just learned. And you only follow up with 3 of them post game 1 because they carried over into game 2. And it definitely shifted how Adair acted and thought about the world. And Aloth as well. Pelagina was never like a very religious person to begin with, so I think she just developed more disdain.
Yeah. But I think that's also interesting. There's so many interesting things with this, but even if it was made up, it does, I mean, that's more a reference to our world as well. It doesn't mean that the individual experience is wrong. And it makes it more complicated in Pillars, since there is a pantheon that acts like the Greek gods and so on. They intervene. But it goes in the same way when talking about faith and religion and in our world as well. That because if someone is a believer and believe that the good, things that happened was because of the gods or the god, then an atheist say, I mean, that's not true. It was, cause and effect. Let's say both can be right. In a way.
Yeah. But like in this world, even if you choose not to worship the gods, they are still there. It's like, choosing whether or not you believe gravity exists, but it's still there. It's still doing its thing. You can choose not to worship any of these gods, but they are still physically in the world and still doing all of the things that they did before the secret was revealed. So for characters to continue to worship them after they learned that they were created, maybe it changes how you think about them in some ways, but they're still gods. They just maybe have a different origin than you originally thought.
Yeah. I had a university teacher when I wrote my essays, master degree essays and so on. And he said, I wrote about identity mostly, and migration and so on. He said that even though just because it doesn't exist, different beliefs about, of course, races and religions and so on, gods, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because it exists in their heads.
Right.
So they relate. So I think that was kind of wise said, and maybe goes for our friends in the Pillars world too, as well. So yeah, I think if it's okay, Rick, with that, should sum
Sure.
this up with, we have had, as always, a lot of fun. So I hope
Yeah.
you who have been listening has had equally fun. If you are a Pillars player, of course, please comment, and maybe you have experienced things differently than us. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's a huge game, so we can see things differently. So with that, and we can come back, Rick, if you want to, of course, to talk about Pillars later,
Sure.
when I played more. So with that, I hope you will have a great Sunday wherever you are in the world, and see you later. Bye. And thank you, Rick, by the way, for being here.
Thank you for having me.